The morning of October 17th began like any other on the rolling plains of central Kansas, where the Wilson family has turned soil for 5 generations. Laura Wilson, the 28-year-old face of Laura Family Farms, was reviewing drone footage of their winter wheat emergence on her tablet, a steam rising from her coffee mug into the crisp autumn air. Her father, Harold Wilson, was already in the massive machine shed, tinkering with the track system of their new combine. For the Wilson family, this was the sacred rhythm of harvest, a chaotic, beautiful ballet of man, machine, and earth. In less than an hour, that rhythm would shatter into a silence so loud it would echo through the agricultural world. Laura Family Farms was not just a business, it was the economic engine of Goodland County, a 3,500-acre testament to the American dream, integrating heritage cattle grazing with non-GMO corn and soybeans. But on that Tuesday, the engine seized. A faulty hydraulic line, a split-second decision, and the brutal physics of heavy machinery conspired to create a tragedy that would force Laura Wilson to choose between saving her family's legacy or losing everything they had built. The accident occurred at precisely 7:48 a.m. Harold Wilson, known to everyone as Old Hank, was performing a pre-harvest inspection of the grain cart's auger system. According to the incident report later filed with the Kansas Department of Agriculture, a support brace on a 30-foot conveyor belt snapped without warning. The falling steel structure caught Hank across the lower back and pelvis, pinning him against the concrete floor of the shed. The scream that followed was not just one of pain, but of a primal alarm that brought his son-in-law, Mateo Flores, running from the cattle pens. Mateo found his father-in-law conscious but ghost-white, his legs already unresponsive. "Don't move the beam," Hank had gasped, his agronomy training kicking in even as his body went into shock. "Call Laura. Tell her the contracts." By the time the air ambulance landed in the North 40, the damage was done. The neurosurgeon at Wichita's Ascension via Christie Hospital would later deliver the devastating news. A shattered L1 vertebra, permanent mobility impairment, and a 6-month minimum recovery before they could even assess the possibility of walking. For a patriarch who had never missed a harvest in 43 years, the psychological wound was deeper than the physical one. Laura Wilson, standing in the sterile silence of the ICU hallway, felt the combined weight of 120 years of family history pressed down on her shoulders. Her father was the memory. She was the media face. But suddenly, she had to become the machine. The immediate fallout was a logistics nightmare that spiraled by the hour. Laura Family Farms operates on a just-in-time model during harvest, with contracts to a major organic cereal producer in Boulder, Colorado, and a seed deal with a Missouri co-op. The contracts had penalty clauses for late delivery that could easily top $200,000. Within 48 hours of the accident, the farm's operational rhythm collapsed into chaos. The custom harvesting crew from Oklahoma, expecting Hank's direction, threatened to leave for a job in Texas. The primary grain hauler canceled, citing insurance concerns over the farm's temporary leadership structure. Most devastatingly, Laura discovered that her father had been the sole signatory on the farm's operating line of credit. Without his signature or a court-appointed power of attorney, which would take weeks, she couldn't access the $150,000 needed for fuel and seasonal labor. In a video recorded on her phone, but never posted, a tear-streaked Laura whispered to her husband, "We are bankrupt in 3 weeks if we don't move." Dad built this on trust, but banks don't trust tears. They trust signatures. This was the moment the public Laura Wilson, the smiling YouTuber with 400,000 subscribers who taught millennials how to calibrate a planter, collided with the brutal reality of private Laura Wilson, a woman watching her inheritance bleed out on a balance sheet. However, the true tragedy was not merely financial, it was the unraveling of the family fabric. Laura's mother, Irene Wilson, had retreated to Harold's hospital bedside, leaving a vacuum in the farm's administrative heart. Her younger brother, Caleb, a hot-headed 22-year-old who believed he should have been the successor, began publicly challenging Laura's decisions in front of the crew. "You've been playing farmer for YouTube," he spat in the grain bin control room, a fight captured by a forgotten GoPro. "I've been bleeding for this land since I was 12. That moment of fraternal betrayal hurt Laura more than the accident itself, but it was the quiet departure of Old Vern, the 70-year-old mechanic who had worked with Hank since 1985, that broke something essential. Vern packed his tools on the third day, saying, "I ain't working for a boardroom. I worked for Hank. This place died when that beam fell." Standing alone in the echoing shed where her father almost died, Laura Wilson faced the abyss. The Laura Family Farms brand, built on authenticity and tradition, was a lie unless she could save the tradition. The crop was ready, the clock was ticking, and she had nothing left but her wits. The turning point came not from a bank or a lawyer, but from a dusty box of ledgers. Searching her father's office for insurance documents, Laura found a handwritten notebook from 1982. It was her grandmother's, Eleanor Gamma Wilson. In it were the records of how the farm survived the 1980s farm crisis. Gamma had organized a swing shift of neighbor women to cook for the harvesters while bartering tractor time for chicken eggs. The solution wasn't corporate, it was communal. That night, Laura made a choice that defied every business consultant's advice. She went live on her personal social media channels, not with a polished ad, but with a raw, unscripted confession. Sitting in her pickup truck with the lights off, she told 200,000 viewers the truth. Dad is hurt. He can't walk. We are out of cash and the wheat is turning. She paused, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "I'm not a CEO. I'm a daughter, and I am asking for help." She ended the video with a simple request. Any local farmers with a grain truck to call a specific number, and any followers to share a GoFundMe she had reluctantly set up for Harold's rehabilitation. The internet, often a cesspool of cruelty, responded with a miracle. Within 12 hours, the video had been viewed 3 million times. The GoFundMe raised $78,000 from strangers in Nebraska, Iowa, and even as far as the Netherlands, where a fan of her agronomy videos watched. But the real power was physical. At 6 a.m. the next morning, Laura walked out to the main shed to find a convoy of 7 grain trucks idling in the fog. Scotty, a grizzled farmer from 2 counties over who had once been a rival in the 4-H circuit, leaned out his window. "You stop crying, Laura. Point us to the field. We got your dad's back." These were not employees. They were the unincorporated militia of the Great Plains. They brought their own fuel, their own lunchboxes, and a ferocious work ethic. For the next 10 days, Laura Wilson orchestrated a harvest she would never forget. She ran the combine while Mateo managed the carts. Caleb, humbled by the public response, took over the moisture testing. Old Vern even returned, silent but present, to fix a belt on the auger. They worked 20-hour shifts, fueled by coffee and the quiet dignity of salvage. They cut the entire 1,200 acres of wheat in a record 9 days, losing only 4% of yield, logistical miracle. But the financial wolf was still at the door. The grain was in the bins, but it wasn't sold, and the seed contract required delivery in 7 days. The trucking company had blacklisted them. Laura, exhausted but sharp, drove 2 hours to Salina and walked into the offices of Heartland Trucking. She didn't ask for a loan. She asked for a trade. In exchange for shipping her grain immediately, she offered Heartland exclusive rights to haul her family's entire 2025 spring soybean crop at a fixed, profitable rate. The owner, a gruff woman named Darlene who had lost her own husband to a silo accident, saw the steel in Laura's eyes. "You're tougher than your dad," Darlene said, signing the deal. "He was a good man. You're a dangerous woman." That contract saved the cereal deal. The cereal company, impressed by Laura's transparency, even added a bonus for early delivery. On November 2nd, just 16 days after the accident, Laura Wilson paid the fall property taxes, the seasonal payroll, and the first $20,000 on Harold's medical bills. She had not just survived, she had outmaneuvered disaster. The true climax of this heartbreaking tragedy, however, was not financial success, but a confrontation in a hospital room. Laura flew to Wichita with the final harvest report. She found her father lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Hank Wilson, a man who defined himself by his ability to fix things, had refused physical therapy for 2 days. He had given up. "I heard you sold the bean rights," he whispered, not looking at her, "and that you cried on the internet." Laura braced for his anger. Instead, he began to weep, the silent, body-shaking sobs of a broken patriarch. "I was supposed to leave you land, not debt," he choked. "I failed the line." Laura sat on the bed and took his calloused hand. "Dad," she said, her voice steady as a furrow, "you didn't fail. You trained me for this. You just didn't know it." She placed the tablet on his lap, showing him the empty fields, the clean ledgers, and the video compilation the drivers had made of the volunteer harvest, tractors with headlights on at 2 a.m., men singing old country songs, the dust rising like a prayer. "This," she said, "is your legacy, not the money. The fact that when you fell, 7 trucks showed up." In the months that followed, Laura Family Farms underwent a profound transformation, one that honored the tragedy without being defined by it. Harold Wilson came home in January, using a walker, but his spirit was revived by a new role. He became the farm's historian and quality control advisor, monitoring soil maps from a desk in the renovated sunroom. Laura implemented the Hank Protocol, a mandatory weekly safety audit that reviews every piece of equipment, a costly change that likely prevented 3 minor accidents in the spring alone. The farm's business model also evolved away from the single point of failure risk. Laura legally restructured the operation into a cooperative LLC, bringing in Mateo and even a reluctant Caleb as voting members, but retaining 51% control herself. She diversified their contracts across 4 different buyers and established a $50,000 emergency operational fund, a painful savings goal achieved by selling 5 acres of their least productive land to a conservation trust. The media narrative shifted too. Laura Wilson's YouTube channel transformed from a day in the life vlog to a hard-hitting series on agricultural risk management, mental health, and the economics of generational trauma. Her most popular video, viewed 2 million times, was titled "How I Almost Lost Everything and Why That's Good." The tragedy also forged an unexpected alliance with the scientific community. The stress of the harvest revealed a hidden leak in their main irrigation pivot, a flaw that would have caused a catastrophic crop failure had the frantic pace not exposed it. Laura partnered with Kansas State University's AG Engineering Department to publish a case study on rapid response infrastructure audits. This led to a pilot program funded by the USDA, where 5 struggling family farms in the region were given grants to perform deep-stress mechanical inspections. Laura became an unofficial mentor, hosting monthly Zoom calls, not about marketing or branding, but about backup hydraulic hoses and emergency succession paperwork. She discovered that the most common failure point on a farm isn't the machinery. It's the lack of a written plan for when the leader eats dinner in the ICU. One of the farms she mentored, the Benders, had a similar father-son accident just 6 months later. Because of Laura's checklists, they had power of attorney signed and a trucking contingency in 24 hours. They lost a leg, but saved the farm. That Laura realized was her true harvest. By the spring of 2026, the scars had healed into strong, thick calluses. Harold Wilson, still in a wheelchair but regaining leg movement, operated the seed tender from a modified cab. Irene returned to handle the books, but now reported to Laura a subtle but crucial shift in family dynamics. Caleb, having apologized publicly at a town hall meeting, took over the livestock division, turning a profit for the first time in 3 years. And Laura? She was standing in the same machine shed where her father almost died, watching the sunrise. She wasn't afraid of the machinery anymore. She was afraid of silence. The tragedy of Laura Wilson was not that her father was hurt. It was that it took his near death to reveal her true life. She had spent years building a digital persona of a perfect farm girl. The accident shattered the persona and revealed the farmer. The contracts, the loans, the broken bones, they were all just inputs. The output was resilience. As she climbed into the combine cab for the first day of spring planting, she kissed a small gold locket around her neck. Inside was a photo of her father and a tiny grain of wheat from the 2024 harvest. She turned the key, the diesel rumbled, and Laura Family Farms rolled forward, not as a legacy, but as a choice. The heartbreaking truth is that sometimes you have to watch a pillar crumble to realize you were the foundation all along.